Severance Season 1 is one of the most striking shows I've watched in recent years. Stick around and I'll share my thoughts. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Severance Season 1. The synopsis on IMDb reads, Mark leads a team of office workers whose memories have been surgically divided between their work and personal lives. When a mysterious colleague appears outside of work, it begins a journey to discover the truth about their jobs. Okay, so basically the idea of the show is these employees at work remember nothing of their life outside of work, and when they're outside of work, they remember nothing about their life at work. That includes the people that they know and interact with, and outside of work, they have no idea what they even do at work, and vice versa. This is an equally character and concept-driven sci-fi drama, I think. And I should say light sci-fi. I mean, the one sci-fi element is this surgical procedure, this chip that's put in their head and stuff that brings about this effect. That's it. In every other way, it's the normal world that we live in, as far as I can tell so far. Light sci-fi drama with quirky, understated comedic elements. The comedy elements, I should say, draw from coworker relationships and experiences that many of us have had at some point in our jobs, or maybe at many points in our jobs, whether you work in a traditional office with a cubicle or not. It starts out feeling weird in kind of a funny way, and then weird in an eerie way, and eventually gets weird in a what the crap kind of way. The comedy doesn't ever go away. There's always these little moments, but it's comedy that's almost like out of disbelief, out of the weirdness of what's going on. Whereas first it starts out as comedy based on the strange idiosyncrasies of characters, quirky characters, things like that. It eventually does lean more into the mystery, more into the drama, and the comedy is a little bit more of a what the crap kind of laughter. Over 9 episodes, we very slowly learn more about who these characters are outside of work, chiefly Mark, but in smaller portions, the rest of the cast as well. To a lesser but even more tantalizing degree, we slowly learn more about the company, Lumen, that they work for, and its strange history and values. It's a very slow unwrapping of these characters and their situation that just had my full attention from beginning to end. It's not a second screen show. Some shows I'll watch on a second screen while I'm playing a video game and stuff, but no, there's many great moments of storytelling here that are done without dialogue, completely depending on either what the camera shows you or the actors' nonverbal performances. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything, but from a dramatic flow and story structure standpoint, it would be important for me to know that this season does something I hate in premium streaming shows. It ends on a cliffhanger. I have a long history of loving shows, usually heavily serialized shows that really depend on each episode builds on the other. It's not like Star Trek The Next Generation where you can watch them in any order, but no, each one builds on the next. You got to watch them in order. There are character arcs going on, and I have a history of loving those kinds of shows that then get canceled before they really finish telling their intended story. And I find that incredibly frustrating, to the point that before I started reviewing TV content, I committed myself personally to only start watching shows after they have finished the complete run of their series without getting canceled, so that I could know that I would not have that crushing experience of having a story yanked away from me before the end. I'll tell you right now, I'm riveted by this show, but I would have much preferred it used kind of a meet me halfway kind of model that some streaming shows will use, where there's a satisfying conclusion to the season's story arc, while still, of course, leaving the door wide open to explore significant unresolved issues. There's a difference between a cliffhanger ending and an unresolved ending, and this season is a cliffhanger ending. If a show like if a show that goes the unresolved approach, but yet still has a satisfying conclusion for the main arc of the first season, or a season, if that kind of show gets canceled, I can still have a satisfying sense of closure for the most part, since many stories intentionally end with some unresolved elements that the consumer is meant to ponder and come up with their own ideas about, even though the creator has no plans or intentions to move forward with the story. That is a type of ending that is purposefully done. And so if they go for I would much prefer unresolved over cliffhanger. Unfortunately, they do not go that route. And this cliffhanger here is about as cliffhangy as they get. Now, thankfully, Severance has been approved for a second season, and I'm hopeful that it's already been written and the turnaround will be fast. I think the turnaround, there's reason to think it would be faster than a lot of shows, given the significant lack of post-production the first season appears to have needed, and I'll talk about that when I talk about kind of like the visuals and effects. But even if it arrives in as little as, say, 6 months, which would be really hard to believe, but like in under a year, even if that were to happen somehow, I'll still feel like I think I'm in that weird space of forgetting a lot of the show, because my life will move on. I'll be thinking about other things, other shows, other things, whatever, so that I'm not in the moment when that cliffhanger is resolved without rewatching the first season. But the problem with rewatching the first season is that a lot of times I remember enough of a show that it's like, I don't really want to sit through all of it again, so it's in that weird middle space. I'd really rather just have the whole story done and watch it at my pace. So the cliffhanger of season 1 is my biggest criticism of the show, despite the fact that it, as I'm sure the producers want, has me salivating for the second season. Now, let me talk about the cast just briefly. It's made up of a mix of familiar and less familiar faces, at least to me, but all, I think, are excellent performers. This is an actor's show. As I said, a lot of the storytelling at times is told not through dialogue, but through watching actors silently react and think about things. I mean, I can only imagine how much these actors enjoy diving into these characters and portraying them with subtle complexity. Adam Scott, possibly best known for his role in Parks and Recreation, plays Mark, and which is kind of the central character, and he just draws me in and invites me to try and decipher the mix of emotions and thoughts behind his eyes. Mark is really the central character, and so it's really satisfying how effectively Adam Scott makes me care about him. I can really say the same about all the characters, though, and the actors, But since Mark is so central, I wanted to spotlight Adam Scott. The whole cast just pulls me in, though, to every moment, demands my attention as they just speak volumes with very subtle expressions. Now, as far as the quote-unquote stunts and visuals go, effects, stunts, stuff like that, very minimal. It's not that kind of show. They use, actually, the most notable effect, quote-unquote, is the classic Hitchcock Vertigo camera effect to portray the transition of characters from the outside world to the workplace, and it's still effective. It's all just done in camera while they're shooting, and it's still very effective for me. The workplace sets and props are also a big selling point of the world. It's as bland as can be in terms of the office and the cubicles and stuff, and that makes the strange little accents that are brought into that environment all the more interesting. Of course, the outside world is much more like the outside world is, so it's very striking the difference between the two because of how interestingly they construct the sets for the workplace. It's not a show about effects at all, but it leans hard into its single sci-fi concept and really explores it on multiple levels, and results in plenty of elements that feel weird and almost otherworldly about it. And so it doesn't feel less sci-fi for its lack of effects and digital goings on. As far as themes, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in Severance Season 1 that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? The main theme, or at least the jumping off point for maybe multiple themes, is this idea of having a work life and a home life. There are so many factors to the experience of having a life at home with people in your personal life and a life at work in a different place with a totally different set of people you don't that don't know you outside that setting at all. When we look at our supervisors or our coworkers or our employees that work under us, we easily see them as just that, although having, maybe different personality traits that make them stand out from others in the workplace that have the same role that they do. But I mean, aside from that, we largely tend to think of them as allies or obstacles in our endeavor to do the job we're trying to do. We often fail to think of them as people with the same degree of complexity in their lives, thoughts, and emotions as we have. We are also encouraged directly or indirectly to leave our personal lives at home and our work lives at work. Some people dive into their work to forget about their personal problems. Others dive into personal recreation to forget about their work. And we see both of those things kind of reflected in Severance Season 1. Severance makes subtle commentary, I think, on how unhealthy it is to overly segment our lives and dehumanize coworkers. It's a reminder to viewers that there is so much more to our coworkers than we realize, both positive and negative traits and things going on in their lives. Severance also speaks to the desire we have for our work to be meaningful and serve an important purpose, and the frustration we feel when it seems to be completely pointless. I don't think Severance preaches anything strongly, despite opportunities to do so. I mean, it even refrains from leaning into a gay romance subplot as much as I thought it might, showing surprising restraint in that area compared to popular entertainment trends right now. Instead, Severance strikes me as a show that simply tells a compelling story with mystery and interesting characters, playing with themes in ways that will likely bring some of your own work-life situations to mind. And I think if we're ready and willing to responsibly meditate on our work lives after watching this show or an episode of this show, and do that informed by Scripture and the purpose that God has revealed He has made us for, in that context, I think Severance is not just a great show, but a great jumping off point for starting some very worthwhile thought or conversation about how we think about our jobs and our coworkers. Now, I have no idea what your tastes are in TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, oh, listen, man, this is hard to say. Wait until the entire series is out. And then it will be well worth Apple TV Plus for a month or so to binge. I mean, if the rest of the seasons go like this one, you're going to want to have it all on Blu-ray. It's one of the most fascinating shows you've seen in years that's going to have you glued from beginning to end in anticipation of what will be revealed, what's going to happen to these characters. But the cliffhanger is almost unforgivable. You'll almost certainly have the most rich experience with Severance if you wait until it's done. And yet, if you can't bring yourself to wait, I'll understand, man. You're still really going to enjoy this season more than any show in a long time. This one's rated TVMA for language, violence, and adult themes, and those are all my thoughts for now on Severance Season 1. Right now, I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know, what I'll create, to say how much I appreciate Gabriel Stinson, Brian Franklin, Olin D. Branham, Drew Rob, Winston Crutchfield, Libre, Justin D. Myers, Matthew Ridgway, and Cosmic Fox and Joel Nelson. Thank you for supporting me, and SPP and CGC, and now all to hear this tune. Thank you as well. Please come back soon. Wanna hear your name in song. Check out our page on Patreon. All right. I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, and click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making so much of my content possible. You can get info over at patreon.com/Spirit Blade Productions. Tons of benefits for you to enjoy there. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Summer insanity.
Liberate butter.